Joining us now, you can follow him on Twitter at peoples_pundit, Pundit, Richard Baris. Richard, the number one political analyst in the country, is with us. We're so honored to have you, Richard, on game day.
Hey, I appreciate being here. Thanks for having me back.
I know, man. You're the man. Okay, what happens today? It's game day. Polls are open. What happens? Give us your full analysis. Richard Baris at peoples_pundit.
It's going to be really close. There's no doubt about it. There's been a lot of absentee ballots out there. We know the problems we've seen with them, but also the Democratic advantage that they're supposed to have. So Republicans will need a pretty big turnout. If they get around million one, then we're talking it's going to be a nail-biter. They needed Trump to come back. He did come back. He put on a heck of a show. So that what we saw in the polling was that Republicans – I don't know if it's cutting off the nose to spite the face, but there are some that were just a little angry and weren't sure whether or not these are not very loyal Republican voters. These are Trump voters, and we saw how close the presidential race was. Perdue had a little bit of a lead in November, but he needs Trump's voters. There's no doubt about it. So it's really all about that today. We're gonna first and foremost look at the size of the turnout, and that'll tell us a lot.
Richard Baris with us. Richard, when you say size of the turnout, how do you even gauge that? What was the turnout on November 3rd?
Yeah, so insane is the number. That's the official number is insane, but really it's around just under 5 million voters. It was just shy in the presidential election. And Perdue and Loeffler are going to need every single one of them. Now, Loeffler, I think, just to sell something with a caveat here, Loeffler appears to be in a slightly worse position in the polling, but I'm not sure that's actually the case. Warnock has been hurt. She used to be down by a few points more than Perdue. She ran a few points behind Perdue, but Warnock's I think he's been hurt by some of the stories that we have seen over the last couple of weeks. And sometimes when you're polling, you can't catch that effect when you have only a couple of weeks in the field. You see it move, and you're not sure when it comes down to game day whether or not it has continued to move right up until Election Day. And if that's the case, we may see Loeffler perform better than Perdue.
Well, it's interesting because, unless I'm mistaken, over 3 million Georgians have already voted, right?
Yes, absolutely.
That's unprecedented.
It is. And we figure Democrats will have anywhere upwards, let's say about 160,000 ballot lead right out of the gate once the bell rings. So Republicans will need to take about 60% so they could make that up on Election Day. 65 would look even better. I will say this: if you look just at the exit polls and just at the results that came in, it's not impossible. They did this in Georgia. To make it close, they basically did this everywhere. That was the pattern. It looks like Democrats, their pattern's going to hold because the absentee ballot is so heavy, and Republicans will have to put on a similar show.
Question for you: David Perdue being locked in his basement. How dramatic is that in terms of how this is going to impact him at the polls?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked that. Actually, I don't know what they were doing. I think some of the decisions that they made, Perdue even more so, was the not debating, for instance, and then floundering on what he was going to do with the vote, the Electoral College vote.
Terrible.
I just don't understand that. These were no-brainers. These are softballs, and he really should have done more to explain himself. Basically pretending you have a 6 to 8 point lead that you didn't have, and refusing to debate to answer some questions about the trading issue, for instance. That was not smart. It will absolutely have an impact. Really, what Republican voters specifically need to see are fighters right now. They need that, and that's not just in Georgia. We're seeing that everywhere. Georgia's just getting the attention, of course, because of the special, but there are a lot of voters in November who came out that are not Republican loyalists, and they wanted to see fighting. I mean, they almost view it as something they wouldn't do without their candidate. And these are people who thought maybe the participation in the political process didn't really benefit them anymore until somebody like Donald Trump came along. So hiding was just not a great strategy. it was a bad strategy. Not not a great one is a nice way to put it.
No, you're right, and that's something that we've been talking about as well. And Kelly last night I thought brought more energy than I've seen on the entire campaign trail. All the pressure that John encouraged folks to put on there. I mean, she delivered last night, and I think that she may have been behind David, but now I think that's flipped.
We're with
I'd agree.
Rich. We're with Rich, the People's Pundit. Baris with us, one of the top analysts, political analysts in America. You can follow him at Big Data Poll, also at People's_Pundit. And Rich Baris, one of the people who predicted there'd be a lot of issues with irregularities, if you will, in the November 3rd election. So, Rich, last night Kelly Loeffler sends a tweet out at 6 o'clock p.m. finally saying, hey, on January 6th, I'm going to vote. I'm going to vote to decertify Georgia. I'm with Cruz. I'm with Josh Hawley. I'm with Trump. Trump acknowledged it at the rally last night in Dalton. She got a big ovation for that. Is that a game changer?
It's I don't want to call it a game changer because I wonder where it's been. It was a couple of weeks that everybody was being advised, make the recount the runoff. Basically, make the issue of the runoffs and the special the recount itself. It was, again, a no-brainer. I hate to keep using that word, but they kind of waited a little bit too long. And, it's certainly better that she did than better late than never is my point. David Perdue was just floundering a day or so ago still on television. So she put herself in a better position. There are these voters, again, in the central and southeastern and the coastal areas of that state that they wanted to see action. And it's just mind-boggling to them why they can't rely on their lawmakers to fight for them and fight for their president the way the other side does. So, it's definitely good that she did it. There's no downside. It's just if you're a Republican, you got to be wishing she did it earlier.
Well, we were calling on her to do it 2-3 weeks ago, Richard. Had she done that, I think it would have been a different story for her.
Absolutely.
And then early, if you look at if you look at Perdue in this self-quarantine, I got to tell you, Richard Baris, I'm just beside myself. Why you would self-quarantine for the last 5 days in basically a toss-up race where you need a big game day turnout when you tested negative twice?
Yeah.
Just so you don't have to go to the Dalton rally, so you'd be heckled off the stage. What was that? What was that about, Rich?
Yeah, that's what you do if you have an 8-point lead. That's what you do if you have a comfortable lead outside the margin of error, where you're trying to protect the candidate and keep them shielded from making any mistakes. That is not what you do if you're in a toss-up race within the margin of error. I hate to say this, but this seems in November to be David Perdue's to lose. And it's almost like if you were to advise him on everything wrong to do to make this a tougher race, and you were to tell him what a losing strategy looks like, it's almost like the people who surround him or whoever made those decisions, they took that advice. It's really it's incredible to me. It's inexplicable. But again, there's a lot of I don't know how else to put this. There's a lot of Republican lawmakers in Georgia and other formerly red states that are now competitive that have been relying too long on the goodwill of Republican voters and a larger base, and they got a little bit complacent. And when you have a name like Perdue, I think sometimes it's a little too easy to find yourself in that place of complacency. And you think, I have a higher name recognition. It is Georgia that I can afford to hang back like this. Well, you can't. You can't. So now we actually see Perdue trailing Trump in some of the Atlanta metro areas. Doesn't mean he cannot win like that. It may be the case in the end that those voters come home anyway, but he should not have been there.
It's interesting. One of we're gonna open the phone lines up to take calls for Rich, the People's Pundit. Baris, you can find him. You want to follow him at Big Data Poll. Rich Baris, BAR1RIS. I always get that mistaken when I put his stuff up. Kira, 1R BARIS.
Everybody does.
He's one of the top analysts, Martha, in the United States. 888-480-JOHN, 888-480-5646. You want to call and ask Rich a question, 888-480-5646. So the question I've got for you, Rich, right now is what you mentioned about Perdue taken for granted. I had a caller last week. I had two callers. One said deplorables are no longer a cheap date, right? Like you got to earn their vote now. You just can't. We just got to show up. Another person called in and said David Perdue was doing basically saying, come and get the booty vote for me. What do you think of that, Martha? A booty call.
Well, I mean,
David Perdue's booty call.
Yeah, no. The base is no longer tolerating that kind of elitist attitude, which is how many times all across our country do we see candidates that have all the resources in the world, all the money, all the name recognition? There's no reason in the world why they should lose these races, but they feel they get too cozy and too comfy and they don't work hard for it, and then they lose. And I think that as far as David Perdue, who I think he's a good man, I just think, wow, what a bad campaign he
Booty
ran.
call.
Yeah. And, like you said, this base is not a cheap date, and they hold their candidates to the fire, their feet to the fire, and expect them to perform.
All right, let's open up the phone lines for Richard Baris with us. You can follow him at peoples_pundit. Let's get to Nancy in Atlanta, line 1. Nancy, you're on with John, Martha, and Richard Baris.
Hey, good morning, everyone. So nice to talk to everybody. Just a couple things this morning, John. I want to remind everybody we're having a mega 285 ride tomorrow. So if you're in Atlanta and get away starting about 9 a.m., we're going to be going in the slow lane around 285, Trump flags and American flags, and then going to the state capitol about 11 for a protest at 12. And if you can't get off work and come to Atlanta, go to your county courthouse at your lunch hour with your flag and let our elected officials in Georgia know we are here, we are watching, and we're not giving up. Now, John, I have to tell you, congratulations on your 10 years. I had no idea. I just met you in November, and you've just done so much for Georgia. I cannot thank you enough. You have challenged me in so many ways. I've never called a radio station in my life until I called you. I've never protested. I went to the Trump rally last night for the first time in my life. I don't do big crowds and all that stuff, and I've just been getting out there and being an activist. So I have to tell you what I did as my covert action last night.
What was that?
I got kicked out of the Ivanka thing because my signs, where's Kemp? Oh, my gosh. And so I knew I couldn't do that at the Trump rally. So I printed out my sign that I wanted to take, which is Recall Kemp, and I pinned it with safety pins on my T-shirt. So I could open my coat, and it looked kind of grunge, I have to tell you, it's kind of cool. And I could open my coat, and once I got in and I'm in the crowd, I'm walking around with that. People are like, I love it. They're giving me thumbs up. Well, I printed out business cards with your name, your app, when you're on, War Room, in our Facebook page. And I probably handed out over 75 cards. I talked to people that are retired. I will volunteer. Tell me what I need to do. I am pumped up. We are adding to the FOJs.
That's
Nancy.
Unbelievable.
Okay. She's tied
for the caller of the day. So Nancy had a Trump shirt pinned to her shirt under her coat. She was opening her coat. So that was kind of like covert. A flasher.
I love that.
Nancy the Trump flasher.
Nancy the Trump flasher, tied for caller of the day.
Recall Kemp. Ooh, baby.
I love that. Now, Nancy, you need to create a Facebook page. Invite all of your friends, everybody you know, get your friends to follow the John Fredericks Show. And, that's how we're going to win some of these races in Georgia.
Oh, we're doing
Nancy,
it. We're going to primary. We already have Facebook. It's called Angry Patriots of Georgia. It was started by Sally. He was one of the ladies who testified last week at the hearing, and we are on fire. So watch out, Georgia. We're coming. Watch out, Kemp, Ratsberger, all you guys. I hope David Ralston, the coward, the yellow-bellied coward, is listening right now. And our senators need to step up and do the right thing.
Nancy, I love your passion and your energy. I just want to bottle it up, and I want everybody all over our country to just drink it up because that's exactly what we need. We need folks that are just going to be out there fighting every day.
So
thank you, Nancy.
If I could say one more thing to Joe about Perdue, we had some young people, Richard, I'm sorry. We had some people behind us that worked for the Perdue campaign last night and had some interesting conversation. I've already voted for both Perdue and Loeffler. Kind of had to hold my nose and go do it, but I did it. And I've encouraged everybody I know to do it. But we keep having this conversation about, here we are. Where is he hiding in his basement? He did this video thing last night. Didn't quite get booed, but you can just watch the audience. They were so disengaged. They are just so clueless. I mean,
I think
Kelly
he's going
came
to lose.
out, but
I think
you
Loeffler's
trained her
going to
into
win
it,
and
Tom.
Purdue loses. That's Richard. That's my prediction. I hope they both win, but I think Loeffler's going to win. I think the tweet she put out last night, going to the rally, I think those people that you were talking about, Richard. You know, it's interesting, Nancy. Richard was saying that as he did his polling and analysis in Georgia, you've got a Facebook page, Angry Patriots. He was like saying it's the anger vote that was not going to be there for Purdue and Loeffler. But the question is, Richard, are they going to turn out today?
Yeah, that is the question. I just want to say this to Nancy when I hear somebody that excited. You know, just remember, Nancy, too, if you want to do something and get involved, Republicans have got to remember one thing, that it's not just who votes, but who counts them. And whether you're in these deep red counties or a blue area like Atlanta, Fulton County, Democrats are the one who count the ballots. And I think a lot of Americans would be shocked to realize how many red counties are still counted by Democrats because they're more active. So, you know, that's something to keep in mind. But I'll tell you, it can't hurt that Loeffler finally, came out. 2 weeks, messaging does take time. And 2 weeks, 3 weeks would have been a lot better than a few days, 24 to 48 hours. But again, that anger vote may turn up, and they may just be telling pollsters like me to pound sand, you know, and they'll show up on Election Day. It's happened before.
All right. Nancy, thank you. Richard, thank you. Nancy in Atlanta, caller today, thank you. Let's get to line 2, Caroline in Atlanta. Caroline, you're live.
Yes. Is Richard Baris still there?
Yes, Richard's with us too.
I sure am.
Okay. Hi. Well, wanted to make a point and then ask a question. So I'm a Georgia voter. I already went out and voted this morning, and my sentiments on this morning's election are, as you stated, disappointed in Purdue and happy that Kelly at least made an effort to make an appearance and say that she's going to object. So yay for today. But my bigger question
that was fabulous.
Yay for today.
That was fabulous.
I'm sorry, Caroline. You made me laugh. Go ahead.
Richard, my question for you is, since you're the math guy, you're the statistical guy, you know the numbers. Where do you think the fraud has occurred in Georgia on November 3rd? I really want to kind of get back to that analysis because that's not going away.
That's a good question. It really, most Republicans immediately want to jump down the throats of big blue counties. And when we look at this stuff in Georgia and elsewhere, it does tend to come up in the repeat offenders. But in truth, it really wasn't isolated to one area or Democratic areas because it was sent out. In the areas where mail-in balloting increased is where we see the most irregularities, not to be surprised. So while you can look at Fulton County and their pathetic rejection rates, and it raises an eyebrow, it doesn't mean that Gwinnett County, proportionately I'm talking about, not total votes, but proportionately, it doesn't mean Gwinnett County is any less suspicious, or for that matter, even some red counties that are rural. And that's because, and I use this phrase a lot, but what we're seeing is that basically this was outsourced. It was made easy to commit just individual voter fraud through mail-in balloting or election fraud, which we would define more as officials having some kind of involvement. I would tell Republicans don't just focus on places like Fulton County because it's not true, or Cobb County or DeKalb or Gwinnett, any of them. The votes are there because they're bigger counties, but it doesn't mean it didn't happen in other areas of the state. In these places where absentee ballots were very easy to obtain and then easy to return, and the verification procedures were weakened, which was basically everywhere, then we'll see it occur. Abbott County, for instance, we found dead voters there. So it really doesn't. Whether it's blue or red, it doesn't matter. They made it very easy to do. There was a lot of hatred out there, and people were willing to do a lot of stupid things. So we're finding it everywhere because of it.
So you're essentially saying it's the Zuckerberg boxes.
Yeah, I mean, that was absolutely a huge part of it. So there were really three pillars to how they did this. And the third was some sort of ballot harvesting. So we made the first one is to expand the pool of available ballots and the ballots that can be tampered with. The second one was to remove the verification procedures, different ways to do that, and to remove what we call integrity deadlines. So if it's not 8 p.m. in Fulton County and Gwinnett County and other places need to report how many ballots they have, then there's these late arriving ballots 24, 48, 72 hours later that nobody can distinguish between legal or illegal because they weren't made to be counted like Florida does on Election Day at a certain time. And then the third one is, doesn't matter how big the pool is if nobody's returning them. And the Zuckerberg boxes were a way for them to get around ballot harvesting if they could not get it the way they wanted to in the state. So like they did in Nevada, for instance. So they had to have an alternative way to return those ballots. And those drop boxes, they're a problem, a real problem.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, Caroline in Atlanta. Got time for one more call this segment. Barbara, south of Atlanta, Georgia. Barbara, you're live. John Fredericks, Martha Bonetta, and Richard Baris.
Hey, everybody. I just finished voting. I had to hold my nose, though, and vote. I'm being honest. I wasn't happy with either one of their performances, and I don't think that they're going to do good for Georgia. But I did vote today.
Thank you. Thank you for voting for our candidates. We feel what you're saying. We get it.
Yeah.
But this is really about the future of our great nation and supporting an America First platform that puts Americans first.
You know, I think too, Barbara, what Barbara's saying, what so many of her callers have said, is that we're done with this. We're done holding our nose, voting for candidates that we know are not going to get there, then not do anything they say they're going to do. They're going to sell out Trump. They're going to sell out the deplorables. They're going to sell out the First America movement. They're going to do business with China. They're going to open the borders. They're going to go do the swamp things. They're going to get money, go to the stock exchange, go to Wall Street, engage with the gangster banksters, and get money from Goldman Sachs. We know they're going to do that.
That's right.
So it's almost like, Barbara, like this is the last time. Like after this, we're done with it. And I think we have to hold the line. Because, you know, all they've done, they've vote shamed us, they've scared us, communism, socialism, it's all a disaster. And so they've shamed us into voting for candidates that don't stand for Trump, don't stand for the movement, and we know at the end of the day are going to sell out to the swamp. So I feel your pain.
Yeah, and I just want to tell other people, too, I normally early vote because of my life, but I waited because I wasn't sure I was going to vote. That's how angry I am. And I made a decision pretty much this morning that, you know what, I need to vote. It's my civic duty. It is a last gasp. But I want to tell people that are feeling the exact same way I am. If I can do it, you can do it. And just let the chips fall as they may be.
Okay, Barbara, line 2, thank you. Richard, we're going to give you the final word. What's the turnout looking like now? Have you heard anything?
You know, I'm listening to the callers. We will get the final absentee numbers, but it's still 8:30 and it's still early. It's that January 5th was such a bad day for Republicans in general. But, you know, for the most part, it's January 5th, right? So you would expect people to be back from vacation by now. But we'll see. That was always an argument to me. Why would you schedule it on January 5th? But we'll get only absentee numbers around noon. We would have a much. I know that's stinks for the early morning radio show, but we'll have a much better idea by the even late afternoon, late morning, early afternoon, how it looks. But, you know, listening to the callers, I can't help but to wonder whether or not in the end people are just going to do it anyway. So if this happened in the past, we've seen this in the past with some of these races Trump gets involved with at the last minute. So many Rick Saccone down the line from, you know, the Pennsylvania special election down the line. People told us they weren't sure if they would actually go and vote, but in the end, the vast majority of them did. And listening to your callers, I wonder if that's not going to be the case here. And then, you know, as a pollster, it's difficult for us to pick up at the last minute whether or not people do finally make that decision. And I think we are going to have a very high turnout. It is on a path to do that already. It's just Election Day is really what's going to make or break the total turnout number. And I'm listening to the callers, and that's good. That's good for Purdue and Loeffler. It is. You need
Richard
a higher
Baris,
number.
thanks for being with us. I want to thank our
Thank
callers.
you, Richard.